Hi, my name is Fabian Mondragon en español. People also call me Fabian, which is very close to the pronunciation in Spanish. You can call me any one of those three, that's fine. I usually introduce myself as Fabian, though. And earlier this week, my grandmother passed away and made me realize that, along with her, so much information left with her as well. She was my last living grandparent, and fortunately enough, I was able to do an ancestry DNA test on her a couple years ago. I think maybe about a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago. And I got a lot of information out of that. And she also helped me start the tree. Her and my mother helped me start my family tree. Now I have about 17,000 people on there. And I've reviewed thousands and thousands and thousands of documents, literally thousands of documents. And I've picked up a lot of tips and tricks along the way, especially if you're doing research in Mexico. I'm focusing my research in the state of Michoacan because both of my parents are from there. But if you're doing research in Mexico, some of these tricks and tips may be able to help you out to expand your tree, especially if you reach the dead end. But before I do that, I will do those in future videos, but I wanted to start off by going through my DNA results first and expanding a little bit on that. And in future videos, some of these results will make sense, which will be really cool. I might touch up on them as I go through the results here, though. I also have done the Ancestry DNA test for my father and my mother, and one of my other brothers is on there as well. Actually, my younger brother, he was the one who did his DNA test first, and I got really excited about that, so I decided to do one. And then I got my parents on board and my grandmother. So I'm not sure if I mentioned it, but I started this back in 2014, and then in 2015 is when I decided to do the test for myself. And I'm going to put up the screenshots because, fortunately enough, I took screenshots of those results because they have changed so much. Not the regions particularly, but they become more precise. But it's really nice to compare them. And I'll show you them three different time periods when I took some of these screenshots of the results. I won't go into the first couple into too much detail because I'll focus on the detail, I think, at the very end. But knowing myself, I might disregard all of that and just go into too much detail for the first two. So starting off was the one from December 2015. And as you can see, the results are very basic and very generalized. They have evolved over time, but we'll start off with these. And we'll go, now they have them in a way where it's your highest percentage on top, and they break it, and then they go down from there. Back then, they had an alphabetical order. So we'll start off with Africa, which I was really surprised to see this on here. I couldn't say 100% surprised because when I was talking about ancestry with my father, way before I started this, he said that somewhere along the line, he heard that we had ancestry from Northern Africa, which was very fascinating to hear and then seeing it on here. And a lot of people don't realize this, but many Mexicans have African descendancy. And that's also because we had a slavery down there. They abolished it about 36 years before the United States, but Mexico also had slavery, and a lot of Mexicans have some of that ancestry in them. So this was out of being surprised out of all the results, is the second most that it would fall like second. The one that I was surprised about the most will be in the future result. So, and then followed by, then here we can go on to Native American, which is about 41%. And that's the Mexican portion of my ancestry. We'll go into a little bit more detail that. We'll go into more detail on that in a little bit. The next one down is Europe, about 37%. and that's primarily from the Iberian Peninsula, which consists of Portugal and Spain. And then there's some Middle Eastern ancestry there as well. And I'll touch up on that a little bit later too. But those were the results when they first came out back in December 2015. And now let's move to October 2019. And here you can see that the results are a little bit more precise, and they're by the percentage. So you can see Native American on top is 40%, which is very close to what it was originally, which was 41%. And before I go into the other percentages really quick, the reason Ancestry says, like, they say your DNA doesn't change, but like the technology behind it, the science behind it, the data behind it gets better over time. And as it gets better, they're able to give you better results of your DNA. So going on to the next one, see now it's no longer the Iberian Peninsula, now it's Portugal and Spain separately. And Portugal is about 31% here, and Spain, which is 17%. And I was really surprised to see this because I thought, just from speaking with my parents, my mom, my dad, they said that we had some Spanish descendancy, ancestry in our blood. And I know Portugal and Spain are connected. They're basically right on top of each other. But it was really interesting to see the Portuguese side being higher. Spoiler alert, that changed in the next update. But when I saw this, I was really surprised to see that. And then followed by Senegal and North Africa. And I'm going to skip the next two and go down to Cameroon, Congo, Southern Bantu peoples. So it's about 6% compared to the 9% that was in the original estimate. So it looks like Native American, Iberian Peninsula, and African are my top percentages for my ancestry. And what I found interesting on this update was that my Middle Eastern ancestry was basically gone. I see Turkey and the Caucasus on there, but not really part of like the Middle Eastern area. So that was surprising to see. But besides that, here's like the update on how it's a little bit more precise. And if we go back up to the Native American, Northern, Central, and South, you can see Michoacan on there now, which is the state where my parents are from, where I'm from as well, and Southern Jalisco. And Jalisco borders Michoacan just to the north of Michoacan, kind of like northwest. It's really interesting how they Michoacan and Jalisco kind of started like at the Pacific coast, and they kind of go like northeast inland. But those are the updates from October 2019. And now from today, January 24th, 2021, they didn't update the results today, but this is when I took the screenshot. So this is the latest results for my ancestry. And here you can see they're no longer calling it Native American. Now they're calling it Indigenous Americas, Mexico. And it's back to the 41% that was in the original estimate, which I thought that was a little interesting. And you can see Southern Jalisco and Eastern Michoacan. And my dad is actually from like Northeast Michoacan. And then the next one down is Northern Michoacan. So that like it's right on to where we are, where we're from in Mexico, at least from my dad's side of the family. My mom's side is from the coast. It's right on the coast. She lives, her house is like 20 feet from like the ocean. It's really cool. And so here's where Spain and Portugal, they basically did like a little flip. But instead of like the 48% from the previous update, now it's like down to 38% for the Iberian Peninsula. And followed by Northern Africa, Senegal, and we'll skip a few there and go down to Cameroon, Congo, and Western Bantu people. It's back to 9%, which was in the original estimate as well. And some other interesting ones on here, England, Northwestern Europe, European Jewish. That's the one that I was surprised about the most. African was the second one that I was surprised about, but European Jewish I think is very interesting. And I know, especially like in Spain and like in Spain, where there's a lot of history behind that, but basically they came to a point where the Spanish Catholics said you either convert to Catholicism, to being Catholics. I'm a little tongue tied, to being Catholics, or you leave Spain. So I'm wondering if some of these are Spanish Jews that came over to Mexico, although there's a different term for Spanish Jews. This one says European Jewish. So maybe it's from other European parts. I know I'm probably going to get bashed by people who really know the difference from that. But I know that happened in Spain, and I know it's a different term for Spanish Jews and than European Jewish people, but I was really surprised to see that on there. And there's Cyprus, which is an island in the Mediterranean, Ireland, Scotland. The Middle East came back on this update, but it's only 1% compared to the 12% found in the original estimate. So those are my Ancestry DNA results, and I think they're really fascinating, especially for someone like who's like I'm going to call myself a genealogy nut. I love this kind of stuff. I know I said I added more than 17,000 people on my tree, and you're probably thinking I have no life, but it's a big hobby of mine, and hopefully in the future videos, I'll be able to give you some of those tips on how to expand your tree, especially if you have some indigenous ancestry to Mexico. So those are the results that I have right now, and basically by this, I'm an ancestor of Spanish settlers. I haven't gone to the point where I can say I'm a descendant of African slaves, but I've gone far back enough where I see one of my direct ancestor labeled as mulatto, which is half black and half Spanish. So, and this is around the time of slavery, but he was labeled as a free man. So I'm not sure if his ancestors, which are also my ancestors, were slaves. So descendant of Spanish settlers, possibly African slaves, and predominantly of indigenous American people. There's several others on there, as you can see, but those are my main, I guess, my top ancestry, where my top ancestry comes from. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video, and sometime in the future I'll post some of those tips for you guys. Thanks.